Adrian Cole pressed Vanessa against the wall of Elena's own bedroom, his hands tangled in her hair, his mouth devouring the lips of Elena's best friend, while Elena's wedding dress hung on the closet door 3 feet away from them. He didn't even flinch when the door opened. He looked straight into Elena's eyes with a smirk that said he had never respected her, not once, not ever. That smirk would cost him everything, because the woman he just shattered would rise from the ashes and marry the most dangerous man in the country just to watch Adrian's perfect world burn to the ground. If you want to see how far a betrayed woman will go, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from so we can see how far this story travels. Elena Vance stood in that doorway for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds that rearranged every molecule of who she was. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't throw anything or collapse to the floor like some broken doll. She just stood there, holding a bag of takeout from Adrian's favorite Italian restaurant, watching the man she was supposed to marry in 6 weeks kiss her best friend like he'd been doing it for years. And the worst part wasn't what she saw. The worst part was what Adrian said. "Close the door, Elena. You're letting the cold in." That was it. That was all he gave her. Not an apology, not a panicked excuse, not even the decency of shame. Just a casual instruction like she was the housekeeper interrupting his afternoon. Vanessa pulled away from him. Her lipstick smeared her eyes wide with something that looked more like annoyance than guilt. "Adrian, I told you to lock the door." "I did lock it," he said, finally stepping back, buttoning the top of his shirt. "She has a key. She always has a key." Elena's fingers tightened around the bag of food. The containers inside were still warm. She had driven 40 minutes across town to surprise him because he'd texted her that morning saying he missed her. He missed her. Those exact words complete with a heart emoji that now felt like a blade twisting in her chest. "How long?" Elena's voice came out steady. Terrifyingly steady. Even she was surprised by it. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. "Elena, let's not do this right now." "How long, Adrian?" He exchanged a glance with Vanessa. That glance told Elena everything. It was the kind of look shared between two people who had a rhythm, a routine, a history. It wasn't the panicked eye contact of a first-time mistake. It was the comfortable, almost bored acknowledgement of two people who had been doing this long enough to develop their own silent language. 8 months, Vanessa said flatly. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall like she was tired of hiding. "It's been 8 months, Elena, and honestly, I'm relieved you finally know." Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart. Something deeper than that. Something structural. 8 months. She ran the math in her head. 8 months ago, she and Vanessa had gone on that trip to Napa Valley together. They'd shared a hotel room. They'd stayed up until 3 in the morning talking about Elena's wedding plans, about flower arrangements and venue options, and how lucky Elena was to have found someone like Adrian. And the whole time, Vanessa had already been sleeping with him. "You sat in my living room last Tuesday," Elena whispered. "You helped me pick out bridesmaid dresses. You tried on 3 different gowns and asked me which one made your shoulders look better." Vanessa shrugged. "I still think the emerald one was the best choice." Adrian stepped forward, his political smile already forming. That smile, Elena had watched him practice it in the mirror before fundraisers. She had always thought it was charming. Now she saw it for what it was, a mask, a tool, a weapon designed to make people trust him right before he destroyed them. "Elena, listen to me," he said, his voice dropping into that smooth, persuasive tone he used on donors and journalists. "This doesn't have to change anything between us. What Vanessa and I have is separate from what you and I have. You're my future. You're the one I'm building a life with. She's just what?" Vanessa snapped, turning to him. "Just what Adrian, not now, Vanessa." "No, I want to hear this. I'm just what... Because last night you told me I was the only woman who truly understood you." Elena watched them argue. She watched Adrian try to manage 2 women at once, his political instincts kicking in, trying to de-escalate, trying to control the narrative. And in that moment, she understood something with absolute clarity. Adrian didn't love either of them. He didn't love anyone. People were assets to him. Vanessa was his escape, Elena was his brand, the senator's daughter who would look perfect on campaign posters and shake the right hands at the right parties. She set the bag of food on the floor. "Keep the pasta," she said. "I'm leaving." Adrian grabbed her arm. "Elena, wait. Think about what you're doing. Think about our families. Think about the campaign. Your father has already endorsed me publicly. If you walk out now, it's not just us who get hurt. It's everyone." There it was, the threat wrapped in concern, the manipulation disguised as logic. He wasn't asking her to stay because he loved her. He was asking her to stay because her family name was worth more to his career than her heart had ever been worth to him personally. Elena pulled her arm free. "Don't touch me again." She walked out of that apartment and sat in her car for 20 minutes without starting the engine. Her phone buzzed 7 times. 4 texts from Adrian, each one more carefully worded than the last, each one designed to make her feel like she was overreacting. 2 texts from Vanessa, one saying, "I'm sorry," and the other saying, "You deserve to know the truth." And 1 text from her mother asking if she'd confirmed the florist for the rehearsal dinner. Elena deleted all of them. She drove to her parents' estate on the north side of the city. The Vance family home was a monument to old money and political influence. Her father, Senator Richard Vance, had served 3 terms and was considered one of the most powerful men in the state. Her mother, Catherine, had spent 30 years building the family's social reputation with the precision of a military strategist. Elena had grown up in this house knowing exactly what was expected of her. Graduate from the right school, date the right man, marry into the right family, produce the right image. Adrian Cole had been the right man, handpicked by her father, groomed by her mother, approved by the party. He was everything the Vance family needed in a son-in-law. Young, ambitious, photogenic, and willing to play the game. The fact that Elena had actually fallen in love with him was supposed to be a bonus, a happy coincidence that made the arrangement feel less transactional. She found her mother in the study, reviewing invitation lists. "Mom, I need to talk to you." Catherine didn't look up. "If this is about the seating chart, I've already moved your Aunt Patricia to table 7. She and your father's chief of staff cannot be within earshot of each other after what happened at the governor's dinner." "Adrian is cheating on me with Vanessa. It's been going on for 8 months. Catherine's pen stopped moving. She looked up slowly, her expression carefully neutral. "Are you certain?" "I walked in on them. In his apartment, in the bedroom where I sleep 3 nights a week." Catherine set her pen down. She folded her hands. She took a long, measured breath. And then she said the words that broke Elena's heart for the 2nd time that day. "What do you want me to do about it, Elena Menstre? It happens. Your father wasn't perfect either, and I survived it. The wedding is in 6 weeks. The invitations have been sent. The press releases have been drafted. Adrian's campaign launch is tied to this marriage. If you cancel now, you don't just embarrass yourself. You embarrass this family." Elena stared at her mother. "You knew. I suspected. And you said nothing." "I said nothing because I was hoping he would get it out of his system before the wedding. Most of them do. Your father did." Elena felt the floor shift beneath her. Everything she had believed about her family, her upbringing, her entire identity was built on a lie. Her mother hadn't raised her to be strong. She had raised her to be compliant, to absorb betrayal and smile through it, to be a beautiful, silent partner in a man's ambition. "I'm not you, Mom." "Elena, sit down and think rationally." "I am thinking rationally. For the first time in my life, I am thinking with absolute clarity." Elena stood up. "I'm calling off the wedding." "Your father will never allow it." "My father doesn't own me." Catherine's face hardened. "Everything you have, Elena, your education, your apartment, your car, your trust fund, all of it comes from this family. And this family has invested in Adrian Cole's future. If you walk away from everything." Elena heard the threat clearly. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't wrapped in maternal concern. It was a business transaction laid bare, stay in line or lose everything. She walked out of her parents' house that night with nothing but her phone, her wallet, and a rage so deep it felt geological. She checked into a hotel downtown and sat on the edge of the bed trying to figure out what to do next. She had no money of her own. Her trust fund was controlled by her father. Her apartment was leased through a family holding company. Her car was registered in her mother's name. At 28 years old, Elena Vance owned absolutely nothing. Every element of her independence was an illusion controlled by people who saw her as a prop in their political theater. She thought about calling her brother Marcus, but Marcus was in London, working for a firm that had connections to their father's donors. He wouldn't cross the family line. She thought about calling her college friends, but most of them were part of the same social circle that orbited the Vance family. She was surrounded by people and completely alone. That was when her phone rang. The number was blocked. Elena Vance. The voice was deep controlled and carried the weight of someone who never had to raise it to be heard. "Who is this? My name is Dominic Moretti. I believe we have a mutual problem." Elena's blood went cold. Everyone in the city knew that name. Dominic Moretti was the head of one of the most powerful crime families on the East Coast. His name appeared in newspaper headlines and federal indictments with equal regularity. He was the kind of man that politicians publicly condemned and privately feared. "How did you get this number?" "I get whatever I need, Ms. Vance. That's not important. What's important is that your fiancé has been taking money from people who work for me, and he's been making promises he has no intention of keeping. Adrian Cole owes me a significant debt, and I have reason to believe he plans to use your family's influence to avoid paying it." Elena's mind raced. Adrian had always been vague about his campaign financing. He'd dismissed her questions with phrases like, "That's handled," and "You don't need to worry about the details." She had assumed he was being protective. Now she realized he was being secretive. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've been watching you, Ms. Vance, not in the way that should alarm you, in the way that a man watches someone who might be useful. You just discovered that your fiancé is a liar and a cheat. Your family has chosen to protect him instead of you. You are currently sitting in a hotel room with no resources, no allies, and no plan. Am I wrong?" Elena said nothing. Her silence was confirmation enough. "I'm offering you a meeting, tomorrow, 11 o'clock. There's a restaurant on 5th Street called Marchetti's. Come alone. I'll explain what I'm proposing, and you can decide whether you're interested. No pressure, no threats. Just a conversation between two people who both want to see Adrian Cole suffer." The line went dead. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in the dark, turning Dominic's words over in her mind. Every rational instinct told her to stay away. This was a mob boss, a criminal, a man whose world operated on violence and fear. But every emotional instinct told her something different. It told her that the legitimate world, the world of politics and old money and family loyalty, had already failed her. The people who were supposed to protect her had chosen to protect the man who betrayed her. The system she'd been raised to trust was the same system that had made her powerless. By morning, she had made her decision. She walked into Marchetti's at exactly 11 o'clock. The restaurant was empty except for a single table in the back, where a man sat alone reading a newspaper. He was older than she expected, maybe mid-40s, with dark hair streaked with silver, and a face that looked like it had been carved from something hard and permanent. He wore a simple gray suit. No jewelry, no ostentation, just quiet, overwhelming authority. He stood when she approached. "Ms. Vance, thank you for coming. I almost didn't, but you did. That tells me everything I need to know about you." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please." Elena sat down. "I want to be clear about something. I'm not here because I trust you. I'm here because I have no other options." "The best alliances are born from necessity, not trust," Dominic said. "Trust comes later, or it doesn't. Either way, the alliance serves its purpose." "What exactly are you proposing?" Dominic folded his newspaper and set it aside. "Adrian Cole has taken $300,000 from intermediaries connected to my organization. In exchange, he promised that once elected, he would block certain regulatory measures that affect my business interests. He has no intention of honoring that agreement. Instead, he plans to use the evidence of those payments as leverage against me to demonstrate his toughness on organized crime. He wants to build his career on my back, and I find that unacceptable." "So this is about business," Elena said, "not about helping me." "Everything is about business, Ms. Vance. But business and personal satisfaction are not mutually exclusive. You want to destroy Adrian Cole because he humiliated you. I want to destroy him because he tried to cheat me. Our goals are perfectly aligned." "And the proposal," Dominic leaned forward, "marry me." Elena almost laughed. "You can't be serious." "I am completely serious. A marriage between us accomplishes several things simultaneously. It provides you with immediate financial independence and legal protection that your family cannot revoke. It gives me a connection to the political establishment that makes me untouchable. And most importantly, it sends a message to Adrian Cole that the woman he discarded just became the most powerful person in his universe." Elena studied his face. There was no warmth in it, no romance, no hidden tenderness waiting to be unlocked. This was a man offering a contract, not a relationship. And strangely, that honesty was more appealing than anything Adrian had ever given her. "What would this marriage look like?" she asked. "Like a partnership. You would have full access to my resources. I would have access to your social connections and political knowledge. We would present a united front publicly. Privately, you would have your own space, your own life, your own autonomy. I'm not looking for a wife in the traditional sense, Ms. Vance. I'm looking for an equal." That word hit her like a thunderbolt. Equal. No one had ever offered her that. Not her parents, not Adrian, not anyone in her entire carefully constructed life. She had always been someone's daughter, someone's fiancé, someone's asset. Dominic Moretti, a man the world called a monster, was the first person to look at her and see a partner. "I need time to think," she said. "You have until Friday," Dominic replied. "After that, I'll find another way to handle Adrian, but it won't be as elegant, and it won't include you." Elena stood up and walked out of the restaurant. She spent the next 3 days in a war with herself. She called her father and told him what she'd learned about Adrian's infidelity. Richard Vance listened quietly and then said, "Every man has his weaknesses, Elena. The measure of a good wife is how she manages them." She called Adrian himself not to reconcile, but to test him. He answered with the voice of a man who was certain she would come back. "Baby, I know you're upset, but we can work through this. Think about everything we've built. Think about your family." "Everything we've built." "Your family. Never us. Never I love you and I'm sorry. Always the machine. Always the system." On Thursday night, Elena called the blocked number back. A voice answered on the first ring. "Mr. Moretti, I accept your proposal." There was a pause. Then Dominic's voice, quiet and steady. "Welcome to the family, Ms. Vance." Elena hung up the phone and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at her was someone she didn't fully recognize, someone harder, someone colder, someone who had decided that if the world was going to treat her like a chess piece, she would become the player instead. She was done being moved. She was done being sacrificed. She was done being the good daughter, the loyal fiancée, the obedient woman who smiled while men used her name to build their empires. Elena Vance was about to become Elena Moretti, and Adrian Cole had no idea what was coming for him. The wedding happened faster than anyone expected. 3 days after Elena's phone call, Dominic Moretti sent a private car to her hotel. Inside was a garment bag containing a simple ivory dress, a pair of diamond earrings, and a handwritten note that read, "No guests, no press, no performances, just us and a judge." Elena held the note in her hands for a long time, and something about its directness steadied her in a way that Adrian's elaborate romantic gestures never had. Adrian had proposed to her at a charity gala in front of 400 people with a photographer already positioned to capture the moment. Dominic proposed in an empty restaurant with a folded newspaper and the truth. She was beginning to understand the difference between a man who needed an audience and a man who didn't. The ceremony took place in a private office. A retired judge named Harold Fenton, who owed Dominic a favor that neither man discussed in front of Elena, performed the service in under 10 minutes. There were 2 witnesses, both men Elena had never seen before and would never see again. Dominic slid a plain gold band onto her finger. No diamonds, no flash, just metal and commitment. "You're sure about this?" Dominic asked her right before the judge began. "I stopped being sure about anything 3 days ago," Elena said, "but I'm done waiting for certainty." Dominic almost smiled. It was the closest thing to warmth she had seen from him, a slight softening around his eyes that disappeared as quickly as it came. "Good answer." After the ceremony, Dominic took her to a townhouse on the Upper East Side that Elena had walked past 100 times without knowing who lived inside. The place was registered under a shell corporation. Nothing connected it to his name, nothing connected it to hers. For the first time in her life, Elena existed in a space that her family couldn't track, couldn't control, and couldn't invade. "This is yours," Dominic said, handing her a set of keys. "The entire third floor, private entrance. You come and go as you please. Nobody enters without your permission, including me." Elena took the keys. "And where do you stay?" "Second floor. First floor is for business. We share the kitchen when schedules allow." He paused. "I should warn you. The kitchen is the most dangerous room in this house. My mother's recipes are in there, and she would haunt me from the grave if I let anyone ruin her marinara." Elena blinked. Was that a joke? From a mob boss? She filed it away without responding, but something inside her unclenched just slightly. That first night alone on the third floor, Elena sat at a desk that Dominic had stocked with a laptop, a phone with a secure line, and a thick envelope. Inside the envelope were documents, bank statements, wire transfer records, campaign finance reports, all of them connected to Adrian Cole. She spread them across the desk and began reading, and within an hour, the full scope of Adrian's corruption became clear. Adrian hadn't just taken $300,000 from Dominic's intermediaries. He had taken money from at least 4 other sources that were equally illegal. A construction company with ties to money laundering had donated heavily to his exploratory committee. A pharmaceutical lobbyist had funneled cash through a nonprofit that existed only on paper. And most damning of all, Adrian had used Elena's family foundation, the Vance Charitable Trust, as a pass-through for dirty money without her father's knowledge. Or perhaps with it. The documents weren't clear on that point, and Elena wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. She picked up the secure phone and called Dominic's number. "I've read the documents. And Adrian used my family's foundation to launder campaign money. Did my father know?" There was a pause. "That's a question you should ask him yourself. I have my suspicions, but suspicions aren't facts, and I don't deal in speculation. If my father was involved, this doesn't just destroy Adrian. It destroys my family." "Yes. And you're comfortable with that." "Elena." It was the first time he had used her first name. "I told you from the beginning that this was a business arrangement. I didn't promise it would be clean, and I didn't promise nobody would get hurt. I promised you power. Power always costs something. The question is whether you're willing to pay." Elena stared at the documents. Her father's signature was on one of the foundation's annual reports. Whether he knew what Adrian was doing with the money or not, his name was on the paper. His reputation was exposed. And if Elena moved forward with Dominic's plan, the fallout wouldn't discriminate between the guilty and the innocent. "I'm willing to pay," she said, "but I want to do this my way, not yours. Mine." Another pause, longer this time. "What does your way look like?" "I don't want to leak these documents to the press and watch the explosion from a distance. That's what you would do. That's what a mob boss does. I want to sit across from Adrian and let him know exactly who destroyed him. I want him to look into my eyes and understand that the woman he treated like furniture just burned his house down." Dominic was quiet for a moment. "That's not the safest approach." "I didn't marry you for safety, Dominic. I married you for power. Let me use it." "Fine. But we do this on a timeline. I'll give you 6 weeks. After that, the documents go public, regardless of whether Adrian has seen your face or not. I have my own interest to protect. 6 weeks is more than enough." Elena hung up and felt something shift inside her. She had just negotiated terms with a Mafia boss, and she hadn't flinched. The old Elena, the one who spent weekends picking out bridesmaid dresses and deferring to her mother's seating charts, would have been terrified. This Elena felt something else entirely. She felt awake. The next morning, she made her first move. She called Vanessa. "Elena?" Vanessa's voice was cautious, guarded, carrying the tone of someone who expected to be screamed at. "I've been trying to reach you for days. Where are you?" "That's not important. I need to see you. Today." "Elena, if this is about Adrian, I want you to know that It's not about Adrian. It's about you. I'll text you an address. Come alone, 1 o'clock. Elena chose a coffee shop in Brooklyn that neither of them had ever visited. She arrived early, ordered a black coffee, and waited. Vanessa walked in 12 minutes late, wearing sunglasses indoors like a woman who had been crying or wanted people to think she had been. "Take those off," Elena said. "I want to see your face." Vanessa removed the glasses. Her eyes were clear, No redness, no tears. She hadn't been crying at all. "You look different," Vanessa said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Something's changed." "Everything's changed. Sit down and listen to me carefully because I'm only going to say this once. I know about Adrian's campaign finances. I know about the illegal donations. I know about the shell nonprofits and the laundered money. And I know that you know about them too because you've been his personal assistant on the side for the last 8 months, not just his girlfriend. He's been using you to move paperwork." Vanessa's face went white, not the white of embarrassment, the white of genuine fear. "How do you know that?" "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is what you do next. You have 2 options. Option 1, you continue protecting Adrian, and when this all comes out, and it will come out, you go down with him. Fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. You'll spend the next decade in a federal courtroom trying to explain why you helped a corrupt politician hide dirty money. Option 2, you cooperate with me. You tell me everything, every transaction, every conversation, every document he asked you to handle. And when the time comes, you testify." Vanessa's hands were trembling. "You're threatening me." "No, Adrian threatened you the moment he made you complicit in his crimes. I'm offering you a way out. There's a difference. And if I say no," Elena leaned forward, "then I walk out of this coffee shop and the next person who contacts you will be a federal prosecutor who doesn't care about your feelings." Vanessa sat very still. Elena could see the calculations running behind her eyes, the fear, the anger, the desperate search for a third option that didn't exist. Finally, Vanessa exhaled and something in her shoulders collapsed. "He told me the money was legal. At first, he said it was standard campaign stuff, just routed through different channels for tax purposes. By the time I realized what was really happening, I was already in too deep. He said if I ever talked, he'd make sure I took the fall alone." That sounds exactly like Adrian. "Elena, I know you hate me, and I deserve it. What I did to you was unforgivable. But I need you to understand something. Adrian didn't seduce me because he was attracted to me. He seduced me because I had access to your family's foundation accounts. I was your best friend. I had the passwords. I had the trust. He used our friendship to get to your family's money." Elena felt that geological crack inside her chest widen. She had assumed the affair was about desire, about Adrian wanting someone younger or more exciting or simply different. But it wasn't about desire at all. It was about access. Vanessa wasn't a lover. She was a tool, just like Elena herself had been. "Tell me everything," Elena said. "Start from the beginning." Vanessa talked for 2 hours. She described how Adrian had first approached her at a dinner party, how he'd been charming and attentive, how he'd gradually pulled her into his inner circle. She explained the financial structure he'd built, a web of shell companies and fake nonprofits designed to funnel money from illegal sources into his campaign fund. She named the donors. She described the meetings. She produced her phone and showed Elena text messages that Adrian had been too arrogant to delete messages instructing Vanessa to move specific amounts through specific accounts on specific dates. By the time Vanessa finished talking, Elena had enough information to end Adrian Cole's career, his freedom and his reputation in one devastating stroke. But she wasn't ready to strike yet. She needed one more piece. "Does Adrian know where I am?" Elena asked. "He thinks you're staying with a college friend in Connecticut. He's been telling people you're taking a mental health break. He told your mother you had a minor breakdown and needed space." "A breakdown?" Elena almost laughed. "Of course he did. The woman who caught him cheating must be crazy. That's always the story, isn't it?" "He's already started spinning it. He told 2 reporters off the record that you've been struggling with anxiety and that the wedding is postponed for medical reasons. He's protecting his image." "Let him spin. Let him think I'm broken and hiding. That's exactly where I need him." Elena left the coffee shop and called Dominic from the car. "I have Vanessa. She's cooperating." "Good. What did you learn?" "Adrian's financial crimes are worse than you showed me. He's not just taking money from your people. He's running a full-scale laundering operation through my family's foundation. And he's using Vanessa as his primary courier." "How exposed is your father?" Elena hesitated. This was the question she had been dreading. "His signature is on the foundation reports. Whether he knew or not, he's legally connected. If this goes public without protection, my father goes down too. Do you want me to protect him? I can make certain documents disappear before the prosecutors see them. I can redirect the investigation so it focuses on Adrian and bypasses your father, but it will cost you. What will it cost? A favor. Unspecified. To be collected at a time of my choosing. Elena's stomach tightened. An unspecified favor from a mafia boss was the kind of debt that could swallow a person whole. But her father, despite his coldness, despite his willingness to sacrifice her happiness for political gain, was still her father. She couldn't watch him go to prison for something Adrian had done to his foundation behind his back. Agreed, she said. Then your father is protected. Now, what's your next move? Adrian thinks I'm hiding in Connecticut having a breakdown. I'm going to let him believe that for 2 more weeks. During that time, I'm going to build a case so airtight that when I walk into his office and lay it on his desk, he won't be able to breathe. And then I'm going to give him a choice. Withdraw from the race and disappear, or watch everything he's built get demolished in public. Either way, his career is over. The only question is whether it ends quietly or loudly. Dominic was silent for a moment. You're more ruthless than I expected, Elena Moretti. That name. Elena Moretti. She heard it and felt nothing familiar. No recognition, no comfort, just a cold, hard identity that fit her like armor. Ruthless is what happens when you push a woman past her breaking point, she said. Adrian just hasn't figured that out yet. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena transformed herself. She spent every morning studying the financial documents cross-referencing Vanessa's testimony with bank records and corporate filings. She spent every afternoon on the secure phone, making calls to people Dominic connected her with: forensic accountants, former federal investigators, a retired prosecutor who now worked as a private consultant. She learned the language of white-collar crime the way she had once learned the language of society fundraisers, quickly, thoroughly, and with the focused intensity of a woman who had something to prove. Dominic watched her work without interfering. He made resources available but never imposed his methods. When she asked questions about his organization, he answered honestly but briefly. When she asked about his past, he deflected with the practiced ease of a man who had spent his entire life controlling what people knew about him. One evening, she found him in the kitchen standing over a pot of sauce that had been simmering for hours. "You actually cook," she said. "My mother taught me. She said a man who can't feed himself is a man who will always depend on someone else. She was right about most things." What happened to her? Cancer, 12 years ago. She was the only person in my life who ever told me the truth without calculating what she would gain from it. Elena leaned against the counter. "Is that why you like me? Because I don't calculate." Dominic stirred the sauce slowly. "You calculate constantly, Elena. The difference between you and everyone else in my world is that you're honest about what you're calculating. That's rare. That's valuable." "Is that all I am to you? Valuable?" He looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes, something deeper than business, something he seemed to recognize and deliberately set aside. "Ask me that question again in 6 months. The answer might be different." Elena held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then pushed off the counter and walked back to her desk. She had work to do. Feelings, whatever they were, could wait. On the 14th day, Vanessa called with information that changed everything. "Adrian knows you're not in Connecticut." Elena's grip tightened on the phone. "How?" "He hired a private investigator. The PI tracked your phone to New York. Adrian doesn't know your exact location yet, but he knows you're in the city and he's asking questions. Elena, he's panicking. When Adrian panics, he gets dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "He called your father this morning. He told Senator Vance that you've been making threats against him and that you might be having a psychotic episode. He's trying to get your father to initiate a conservatorship." Elena's blood turned to ice. A conservatorship. Adrian was trying to have her declared mentally incompetent. If her father cooperated, Adrian could use the legal system to strip Elena of her autonomy, her voice, and her ability to expose him. It was the ultimate power play. If you can't silence a woman with threats, just have a judge declare her insane. "Elena, are you there?" "I'm here. Call my father. Tell him I want to meet. Tomorrow. Not at the family house. Somewhere neutral. And Vanessa, don't tell Adrian. If he finds out I'm coming, he'll try to get there first." Elena hung up and sat in the dark for a long time. Adrian wasn't just fighting back. He was trying to erase her, to make her disappear, not through violence but through paperwork, through doctors and judges and the polite legal machinery of institutional power. He wanted to turn her into a non-person, a footnote, a cautionary tale about hysterical women who couldn't handle the pressures of political life. She picked up the secure phone one more time. "Dominic, we need to accelerate the timeline. Adrian is trying to have me committed." The silence on the other end was different this time, heavier. When Dominic finally spoke, his voice carried something Elena hadn't heard from him before. It sounded like anger. "Nobody puts my wife in a cage," he said quietly. "Nobody." Elena closed her eyes. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, she didn't feel alone. Dominic made 3 phone calls that night. Elena didn't hear what he said or who he spoke to, but by morning, 2 things had changed. First, a lawyer named Grace Holloway appeared at the townhouse with a briefcase full of preemptive legal filings designed to block any conservatorship petition before it could reach a judge. Second, Dominic's people had located Adrian's private investigator, a former cop named Ray Sutton, who ran a one-man surveillance operation out of a strip mall in Queens. Ray Sutton would not be following Elena anymore. Dominic didn't explain how that conversation had gone, and Elena didn't ask. Grace Holloway was not what Elena expected. She was a small woman in her early 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose and the calm, devastating precision of someone who had spent 40 years making powerful men regret their choices in courtrooms. "So you're the one who married Dominic," Grace said, sitting across from Elena at the kitchen table. "I've known him since he was 19. He's never surprised me until now." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation. Let me tell you where we stand. Adrian Cole has contacted your father about initiating a conservatorship. Under New York law, a conservatorship requires a psychiatric evaluation, a petition to the court, and evidence that the individual in question is incapable of managing their own affairs. Adrian is trying to rush the process by claiming you've exhibited erratic behavior, including disappearing without notice, cutting off communication with family, and making paranoid accusations against him." "Paranoid?" Elena repeated. "The man who stole money through my family's foundation is calling me paranoid." That's exactly how these things work. The person with power defines the narrative. Right now, Adrian has the narrative. Your father is listening to him. Your mother is supporting him. If we don't move quickly, Adrian could have a judge sign off on a temporary conservatorship within 72 hours. Can you stop it? Grace opened her briefcase and produced a stack of documents. "I've already filed a preemptive motion challenging any conservatorship petition on the grounds of improper motivation. I've included Adrian's status as your former fiancé and his personal conflict of interest. I've also requested that the court appoint an independent psychiatric evaluator rather than allowing Adrian to choose one. That buys us time, but time is all it buys. If Adrian pushes hard enough and your father cooperates, a judge could still rule against you. Then I need to talk to my father before Adrian gets to him again. That's risky. Your father is not your ally right now." "My father is being manipulated. There's a difference." Grace looked at her over the rim of her glasses. "Is there? Because from where I sit, your father chose Adrian's career over your happiness long before any of this started. A man who does that isn't being manipulated. He's making a calculation." Elena felt the truth of that statement hit her like a slap. Grace was right. Her father hadn't been deceived by Adrian. He had been a willing partner. The difference was that now Adrian's ambitions were threatening to expose the family, and Richard Vance was scared. Scared men do desperate things. Conservatorship was a desperate thing. "I'm meeting him anyway," Elena said. "Today, noon." Grace sighed. "Then take this." She slid a small digital recorder across the table. New York is a one-party consent state. You can legally record any conversation you're a part of without the other person's knowledge. If your father says anything that reveals he's acting under Adrian's influence rather than genuine concern for your welfare, that recording becomes evidence in our motion. Elena picked up the recorder. It was smaller than her thumb. "You've done this before." Honey, I've been doing this since before you were born. Men have been trying to lock up inconvenient women since the invention of the asylum. The tools change, the playbook doesn't. Elena met her father at a restaurant in Midtown that the family had used for private conversations for years. Neutral territory, technically, though nothing about the Vance family was ever truly neutral. Senator Richard Vance was already seated when she arrived, a glass of sparkling water in front of him, his posture rigid with the controlled tension of a man accustomed to managing crises. Elena. He stood when she approached, and for a moment she saw something genuine in his face. Relief. He was relieved she was alive and present, and not the broken, raving woman Adrian had apparently described. Dad? They sat. Richard studied her for a long moment. You look well. Adrian said you were... Adrian said I was having a breakdown. I know what he told you. It's not true. Then where have you been? Your mother and I have been worried sick. You disappeared without a word. You stopped answering calls. You left your apartment. What were we supposed to think? You were supposed to think that your daughter discovered her fiancé cheating on her with her best friend and needed space. That's a normal human reaction, Dad, not a psychiatric emergency. Richard's jaw tightened. Adrian explained the situation with Vanessa. He acknowledges he made a mistake. He's willing to go to counseling. He wants to work things out. He wants to work things out because I'm useful to his campaign. That's the only reason. That's not fair, Elena. Really. Then let me ask you something. When I called you the night I found out, what did you say to me? Do you remember your exact words? Richard looked away. He remembered. You told me that every man has his weaknesses and that the measure of a good wife is how she manages them. Those were your words, Dad. You didn't say you were sorry. You didn't say Adrian was wrong. You didn't offer to come get me or take me home. You told me to manage it, like I was an employee handling a PR crisis. Elena, I was trying to be pragmatic. You were trying to protect your investment. Adrian is your investment. His career, his campaign, his future in politics. That's what you've been protecting, not me. Richard leaned forward. That's not true. Everything I've done has been for this family. Then explain the conservatorship. His face changed. The carefully maintained composure cracked just slightly. Adrian mentioned that he was concerned about your mental state. He suggested that perhaps a temporary arrangement would... Adrian wants to have me declared incompetent so I can't talk. That's what this is. He's not worried about my mental health. He's worried about what I know. What do you know? Elena held her father's gaze. This was the moment, the pivot point. She could tell him everything right now, lay out the entire financial conspiracy, show him the documents, play him the text messages. But something stopped her. Not caution, not strategy, instinct. The instinct of a woman who had spent her entire life reading her father's face and knowing when he was listening and when he was calculating. Right now, Richard Vance was calculating. I know enough to end Adrian's career, Elena said carefully, and I know enough to protect this family while I do it. But I need you to do something for me first. What? Reject the conservatorship petition. Tell Adrian no. Tell him you've spoken to me and I'm fine. Buy me 3 weeks and I will make this problem disappear in a way that keeps the Vance name intact. Richard's eyes narrowed. How? You don't want to know how. You just need to trust me. Trust you, Elena. You vanished for 2 weeks. You won't tell me where you're living. You won't tell me what you're planning. And now you're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to choose me. For once in my life, I'm asking you to choose your daughter over your political agenda. Can you do that? The silence between them stretched long and painful. Elena could hear the restaurant sounds around them, the clink of glasses, the murmur of other conversations, the normal rhythm of a world that had no idea what was happening at this table. Her father's face was a battlefield. She could see the politician warring with the parent, the strategist fighting the father. 3 weeks. He said finally. I'll block the conservatorship for 3 weeks. After that, I need results, Elena. I need this resolved. You'll have them. She left the restaurant and sat in the car Dominic had sent the digital recorder heavy in her pocket. She had gotten what she needed. Her father hadn't said anything incriminating on the recording, but he had confirmed that Adrian was behind the conservatorship push, and he had agreed to delay it. 3 weeks. That was her window. She called Dominic. It's done. My father is holding off on the conservatorship. We have 21 days. Then we move to phase 2. What's phase 2? You said you wanted to sit across from Adrian and let him know who destroyed him. Before you can do that, you need to destroy his support system. Adrian Cole doesn't operate alone. He has donors, advisors, fixers. Take away the people around him, and when you finally sit down in front of him, he'll have nobody left to call for help. Where do we start? His campaign manager, a man named Peter Langford. Peter has been with Adrian since the beginning. He knows every secret, every deal, every handshake. He's also the one who set up the shell nonprofits that laundered your family's foundation money. Without Peter, Adrian's entire financial structure collapses. How do I get to Peter? You don't. I do. Peter Langford has a gambling problem. He owes money to people who work for me. As of last night, I own his debt, which means I own Peter Langford. Elena felt a chill run through her. This was the part of Dominic's world that she had known existed but hadn't yet confronted directly. The leverage, the coercion, the quiet violence of a man who controlled people through their weaknesses. What are you going to do to him? I'm going to have a conversation with him, that's all. A conversation in which I explain that his debts are forgiven in exchange for his full cooperation. Names, dates, account numbers, everything he knows about Adrian's operation. And if he refuses, he won't refuse. Men like Peter are survivors. They follow power. Right now, he thinks Adrian is the most powerful person in his orbit. Once he understands that Adrian's power is temporary and mine is not, he'll adjust his loyalties accordingly. Dominic was right. Peter Langford didn't refuse. Within 48 hours, Dominic's people had met with Peter and laid out the situation with the clinical precision of a corporate takeover. Peter, facing the choice between financial ruin and cooperation, chose cooperation with the speed of a man who had been waiting for permission to betray his boss. The information Peter provided was devastating. He confirmed everything Vanessa had told Elena and added layers that even Vanessa hadn't known about. Adrian's corruption wasn't limited to campaign finance. He had been taking bribes from real estate developers in exchange for promises to rezone certain neighborhoods once elected. He had pressured a local journalist to kill a story about his family's tax evasion by threatening to expose the journalist's personal life. And most shockingly, Adrian had been in preliminary discussions with a foreign lobbying group about post-election policy favors in exchange for a 7-figure payment routed through an offshore account. This isn't just corruption, Elena said to Dominic after reading Peter's debrief. This is espionage-level stuff. Adrian isn't just a dirty politician, he's a traitor. He's a man who believes the rules don't apply to him. That's not unusual in politics. What's unusual is that someone is finally going to prove him wrong. Elena spent the next week assembling her case with the methodical intensity of a prosecutor. Grace Holloway reviewed every document for legal soundness. Vanessa provided supplementary testimony. Peter Langford filled in the gaps. By the end of the week, Elena had a dossier that was 3 inches thick and capable of ending not just Adrian's campaign, but his freedom. But something happened during that week that Elena hadn't anticipated. She started to feel something for Dominic. It wasn't romance, not exactly. It was closer to respect, the deep, grudging recognition that comes from watching someone operate with competence and honesty in a world designed to punish both. Dominic never lied to her. He never softened the truth. He never pretended to be something he wasn't. When she asked him hard questions, he gave her hard answers. When she pushed back on his methods, he listened without defensiveness and sometimes adjusted. He was in the strangest possible way the most honest person in her life. One evening, she found him on the 2nd floor, sitting alone, staring at his phone, with an expression she had never seen on him before. It looked like grief. What happened? He looked up. For a moment, he seemed to consider not answering. Then something shifted, and he let her in. My nephew, Marco, he's 16. His mother, my sister, raised him to stay out of this life, sent him to private school, kept him away from the family business. And today Marco told his mother he wants to drop out and come work for me. What did you say? I said no. I said the same thing my mother said to me when I was 16, that this life eats people alive, and the ones who survive it are never whole. But Marco doesn't hear that. He sees the cars, the respect, the fear in people's eyes when they hear the name Moretti. He doesn't see the cost. What is the cost? Dominic set his phone down. Everyone I've ever loved has either left me, been taken from me, or learned to be afraid of me. My mother died thinking I wasted the life she gave me. My father died in prison. My brother was killed by a rival family when I was 23. I have more enemies than I can count and more money than I can spend, and not a single person in my life who talks to me without wanting something. He paused. Until you. Elena stood very still. I want something, Dominic. I want revenge. Yes, but you don't pretend otherwise, and you don't ask me to be something I'm not. Everyone else wants me to be softer, harder, smarter, more generous, more ruthless. You just want me to be useful. There's a strange kind of freedom in that. Elena sat down across from him. When this is over, when Adrian is finished and the case is closed, what happens to us? That depends on you. The legal marriage can be dissolved whenever you want. No conditions, no penalties. You walk away clean. And if I don't want to walk away? Dominic looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Then we figure out what this is. Together. Without pretending. Elena nodded slowly. Without pretending. I can work with that. Something passed between them in that moment. Not a declaration, not a kiss, not any of the things that romance stories are built on. Just an understanding. A quiet agreement between two damaged people that whatever was happening between them was real, even if neither of them had a name for it yet. The next morning, Elena received a call that shattered the fragile calm she had been building. Elena! It was Vanessa, and her voice was shaking. Adrian knows. Knows what? He knows about Peter. He found out that Peter met with someone connected to the Moretti organization. He confronted Peter last night, and Peter panicked. He didn't give up your name, but he told Adrian that the Morettis are building a case against him. Elena's heart hammered. Did Peter mention me? No, but Adrian isn't stupid. He's going to start connecting dots. And Elena, there's something else. Adrian called your father this morning. He told Senator Vance that the Moretti family is targeting him, that they're trying to destroy his campaign using illegal surveillance and stolen documents. He's framing this as an organized crime attack on a legitimate political candidate. He's going to play the victim. He's already playing it. He called a press conference for tomorrow. He's going to announce publicly that he's been the target of criminal intimidation by the Moretti organization. He's going to use this to boost his campaign, the tough candidate who stands up to the mob. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. Adrian wasn't just defending himself, he was counterattacking. He was taking Dominic's involvement and turning it into a campaign asset. Instead of being the corrupt politician caught with dirty money, he would become the brave public servant standing up against organized crime. It was brilliant. It was infuriating. And it meant Elena's plan to confront him privately was no longer viable. She called Dominic immediately. We have a problem. I know. Peter called me 20 minutes ago. Adrian is holding a press conference tomorrow. He's going to publicly accuse your organization of targeting him. Let him. Let him, Dominic. If he gets ahead of this story, he controls the narrative. Everything we've built falls apart. Elena, listen to me. Adrian Cole is about to stand in front of television cameras and declare war on the Moretti family. He thinks that makes him powerful. He thinks the public will rally behind him, but he's making a fatal mistake. What mistake? He's putting himself in the spotlight. And when you're in the spotlight, every shadow becomes visible. Let him have his press conference. Let him make his accusations. And then, 24 hours later, we release everything. The bank records, the shell companies, the bribes, the foreign lobbying contacts, all of it. We let the public see that the man who claims to be fighting corruption is the most corrupt person in the room. Elena's mind raced. Dominic was right. Adrian's press conference wasn't a strength, it was a trap. He was about to draw maximum attention to himself at the exact moment when his secrets were most vulnerable. The timing has to be perfect, Elena said. It will be. Grace Holloway will coordinate with 3 separate news outlets simultaneously. The documents will be verified by independent forensic accountants before release. By the time Adrian finishes his press conference, the first stories will already be in production. He'll walk off that stage thinking he's won, and by midnight, his world will be on fire. Elena closed her eyes. This was it. The moment she had been building toward since that night in Adrian's doorway, watching him kiss her best friend with her wedding dress hanging behind him. Every humiliation, every betrayal, every calculated cruelty was about to come back to him with compound interest. "Do it," she said. "Release everything." Dominic's voice was quiet and certain. "Consider it done, Mrs. Moretti." Elena hung up the phone and pressed both hands flat against the desk to stop them from shaking. Not from fear, from the terrifying electric realization that there was no turning back now. Adrian Cole was about to step onto a stage and declare himself a hero, and Elena Moretti was about to burn that stage to the ground with him still standing on it. Adrian Cole stood behind a podium the next morning with the American flag positioned perfectly over his right shoulder and delivered the performance of his life. Elena watched the live broadcast from the townhouse, standing 3 feet from the television arms, crossed jaw tight. Adrian's voice carried that rehearsed tremble, the one he used when he wanted to appear vulnerable without actually being vulnerable. He spoke about threats against his family. He spoke about anonymous intimidation from criminal elements trying to silence honest public servants. He invoked the names of prosecutors and journalists who had been targeted by organized crime throughout history, placing himself in their company with the casual arrogance of a man who genuinely believed his own mythology. "I will not be intimidated," Adrian said, gripping the sides of the podium. "I will not be silenced, and I will not allow the forces of corruption and criminality to dictate the future of this great state." The reporters applauded. Actually applauded. Elena felt bile rise in her throat. Dominic stood behind her watching the same broadcast with the stillness of a man who had seen this kind of theater 1,000 times. "He's good," Dominic said quietly. "I'll give him that. He's a liar. The best ones always are. But watch his hands. See how he keeps adjusting his cufflinks. That's nerves. He knows something is coming. He just doesn't know what." Elena's phone buzzed. Grace Holloway. She answered immediately. "Tell me." All 3 outlets have confirmed, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and ProPublica. Each one received the complete document package at 6 this morning. Independent verification is underway. The Times is moving fastest. Their forensic team has already authenticated the bank records. They're planning to publish tonight at 9 Eastern. Tonight? Tonight. Adrian's press conference just accelerated everything. The editors smell blood. A politician who publicly declares war on organized crime on the same day that evidence of his own corruption surfaces. That's not just a story, that's a career-defining investigation for whoever publishes first. Elena gripped the phone. "What about my father? Are the documents clean?" Dominic's people removed every reference to Senator Vance from the package. The foundation records have been redacted to show only Adrian's involvement. Your father's signature pages were replaced with certified copies that don't include his name. As far as the press is concerned, Adrian operated through the Vance Foundation without the family's knowledge or consent. Will that hold up? Under journalistic scrutiny, yes. Under federal investigation, probably. Under oath. That depends on whether anyone who knows the truth decides to talk. Peter Langford has been relocated. Vanessa is cooperating with us. The only wild card is your father himself. Elena closed her eyes. Her father. The man who had told her to manage her fiancé's infidelity, like a scheduling conflict. The man who had almost signed away her autonomy because Adrian asked him to. She was protecting him anyway. Because despite everything, despite the coldness, the calculations, the lifelong subordination of her happiness to his ambition, he was her father. And some bonds don't break cleanly no matter how much you want them to. "My father won't talk," Elena said. "He has too much to lose." "Then we're clear. 9 o'clock tonight, Elena. That's when Adrian Cole's world ends." Elena hung up and turned to Dominic. 9 o'clock. He nodded. "What do you want to do until then?" "I want to call Adrian." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Now, before the story drops. I told you from the beginning, I want him to know it was me. I don't want him to read about his destruction in a newspaper and wonder who did this. I want him to hear my voice. I want him to know that the woman he threw away is the one who burned everything he built. That's a risk. If you call him now and he records it, he could use it to claim you coordinated with my organization to frame him. He won't record it. Adrian doesn't record anything. He learned that from your world, actually. Never leave evidence. It's the one smart thing he ever did. Dominic studied her. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for 3 weeks. Then make the call. But Elena, keep it short. Say what you need to say and hang up. Don't give him time to think and don't give him time to plan. Elena picked up the secure phone. She dialed Adrian's personal cell from memory. The number she had called 1,000 times. The number she had whispered goodnight into. The number that had texted her, "I miss you," on the morning she discovered his betrayal. He answered on the second ring. Hello? His voice was high-energized, riding the adrenaline of his press conference performance. Adrian? Silence. 2 full seconds of silence while his brain processed the voice. Elena, where the hell have you been? Do you know what's been going on? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Your father is worried sick. We all are. Stop talking, Adrian. I'm going to say something and you're going to listen. Can you do that? Elena, whatever is going on with you, we can fix this. I know things got messy between us, but I've been thinking, and I really believe that if we just sit down together... You took $300,000 from Dominic Moretti's intermediaries. You laundered money through my family's foundation using shell nonprofits that Peter Langford set up. You accepted bribes from real estate developers in exchange for rezoning promises. You blackmailed a journalist named David Chen to kill a story about your tax evasion. And you entered into preliminary negotiations with a foreign lobbying group for post-election policy favors. I have documentation for all of it. The silence on the line was different now. Not the silence of surprise. The silence of a man whose entire circulatory system had just seized. Elena. His voice had dropped. The charm was gone. The political smoothness was gone. What remained was raw and small and desperate. Where did you get that information? Does it matter? Elena listened to me very carefully. Whoever gave you that information is manipulating you. These are dangerous people. You don't understand what you're involved in. I understand perfectly. I understand that you used me as a prop for your campaign. I understand that you seduced my best friend to get access to my family's financial accounts. I understand that you tried to have me declared mentally incompetent when I found out. And I understand that in approximately 8 hours, every major news outlet in this country is going to publish the evidence of your corruption in exhaustive detail. 8 hours. What are you talking about, Elena? You can't do this. You have no idea what the consequences will be. The consequences will be that your career is over. Your campaign is finished. Your donors will abandon you. Your party will disown you. And every person who stood behind you at that podium today will pretend they never knew your name. Adrian's breathing was ragged now. This will destroy your family, too. Your father's foundation is all over those documents. My father's involvement has been removed from every document that will be published. He's clean. The only name on those records is yours. That's impossible. His signature is on the annual reports. Not anymore. The implication hit Adrian like a freight train. He understood now. Someone with power, someone with resources far beyond his own, had scrubbed those documents. Someone had protected the Vance family while leaving Adrian completely exposed. And that someone was the same person Elena had turned to for help. You married him. Adrian's voice cracked. You married Dominic Moretti. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction so intense it bordered on physical. Yes, you married a mob boss to get back at me. Do you hear how insane that sounds? It sounds like a woman who was out of options making the only power move available to her. You took everything from me, Adrian. My trust, my dignity, my financial independence, my best friend, my family support. You stripped me down to nothing and expected me to come crawling back because I had nowhere else to go. But you forgot something. What? You forgot that a woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous person in any room. Adrian was scrambling now. She could hear it in his voice, the rapid mental calculations of a man trying to find an exit that didn't exist. Elena, we can make a deal. Whatever you want. I'll withdraw from the race. I'll pay back every dollar. I'll sign a confession. Whatever it takes. Just don't let those documents go public, please. Why not? Because it won't just be my career. It'll be federal charges, money laundering, fraud, conspiracy. I'll go to prison, Elena. Is that what you want? For the man you once loved to spend the next 20 years in a cell. Elena gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. Once loved, He said it like it was a weapon, like the memory of their relationship was something he could use to pry open her resolve. And for one terrible moment, it almost worked. She remembered the good times, the early dates when he would pick her up in that ridiculous vintage car and drive to the coast. The night he cooked her dinner and burned everything, and they ended up ordering pizza and laughing until midnight. The morning he told her he loved her for the first time, standing in her kitchen with coffee in his hand and sunlight in his eyes. But those memories were contaminated now. Every kind word, every tender moment, every declaration of love was inseparable from the calculation behind it. Adrian hadn't loved her. He had invested in her. And when the investment stopped paying returns, he had moved on to the next opportunity without even bothering to close the account. You should have thought about prison before you broke the law, Adrian. And you should have thought about me before you broke my heart. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking again. She set the phone down and pressed her palms flat against the desk, breathing slowly, deliberately forcing the adrenaline back down. Dominic's voice came from behind her. Are you all right? No, but I will be. The next 8 hours were the longest of Elena's life. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sit still. She paced the third floor, reviewing documents she had already memorized, checking her phone every few minutes for updates from Grace Holloway. Dominic stayed on the second floor, making calls, managing his own operation with the steady competence of a man who had lived through worse. At 7 o'clock, Grace called. The Times is publishing at 8:30. They moved it up. ProPublica is going live at 9. The Post will follow at 9:15. Why did the Times move up? Because Adrian's people got wind of the story. Someone on his team called the Times legal department 30 minutes ago, threatening a defamation lawsuit if they published. The editors took that as confirmation that the documents are real. Nothing makes a newspaper publish faster than a politician trying to suppress a story. Adrian had tried to stop it. He had made the call, pulled the last lever available to him, and it had backfired. The threat of a lawsuit wasn't a shield. It was a neon sign pointing directly at his guilt. At 8:29, Elena sat down in front of the television. Dominic sat beside her, not touching, not speaking, just present. At 8:30, the screen changed. Breaking news. The anchor's face was grave, the way anchors look when they know they're delivering the kind of story that reshapes careers and topples institutions. The story ran for 14 minutes. Bank records, wire transfers, shell company registrations, text messages between Adrian and Peter Langford discussing how to route illegal donations through the Vance Foundation, excerpts from Adrian's communications with the foreign lobbying group, a timeline of bribes from real estate developers. And at the center of it all, Adrian Cole's name repeated again and again, attached to every transaction, every conversation, every lie. By the time the segment ended, Elena's phone was vibrating non-stop. Messages from people she hadn't heard from in years, former classmates, old friends, distant relatives. Everyone wanted to know if she was okay, if she had known if the reports were true. She ignored all of them. At 9:15, the Post published their version. At 9:30, CNN picked up the story. By 10 o'clock, Adrian Cole's name was the #1 trending topic on every social media platform in the country. At 10:45, Elena's phone rang. It was her mother. Elena? Catherine Vance's voice was shaking, not with sadness, with fury. What have you done? I told the truth. You destroyed this family. No, Mom. Adrian destroyed this family. I just made sure the world knew about it. Your father's foundation is all over the news. Reporters are calling the house. The party chairman called and demanded a statement. This is a disaster, Elena, an absolute disaster. Dad's name isn't in the documents. He's protected. Protected. Do you think that matters? The association alone is devastating. People are going to look at the Vance Foundation and assume your father was involved, whether his name is there or not. Then maybe Dad should have been more careful about who he endorsed for the family. You ungrateful, selfish. Catherine stopped herself. Elena could hear her mother breathing, fighting for control. Where are you? I'm sending a car. I'm with my husband. The silence that followed was absolute. Elena could practically feel her mother's brain short-circuiting. You're what? My husband, Dominic Moretti. We were married 3 weeks ago. You married the Mafia. Catherine's voice went flat. Dead. like a machine shutting down. You married into the Mafia to punish Adrian Cole. I married a man who offered me the one thing this family never did: autonomy. Elena, you have lost your mind. Actually, Mom, I think I finally found it. Catherine hung up. Elena set the phone down and felt a strange lightness in her chest. She had said the words. She had told her mother the truth. And the sky hadn't fallen. The world hadn't ended. She was still standing, still breathing, still Elena. Dominic appeared with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one without comment and sat down beside her. "Your mother took it well," he said dryly. "She called me ungrateful and selfish." Those are usually the words people use when they realize they can't control you anymore. Elena sipped the coffee. It was strong and bitter, and exactly what she needed. What happens now? Now we wait. Adrian's legal team will spend the next 48 hours trying to discredit the documents. They'll fail because the documents are authentic. His donors will start pulling support by tomorrow morning. The party will distance themselves by tomorrow afternoon. And by the end of the week, Adrian Cole will be standing alone, without money, without allies, and without a single person willing to go on camera and defend him. And the criminal charges. That depends on the U.S. Attorney's Office. Grace has contacts there. She'll make sure the right people see the right evidence at the right time. Federal investigations move slowly, but this case is high profile enough to move faster than usual. If I had to guess, I'd say Adrian is looking at an indictment within 60 days. 60 days. Maybe less. The foreign lobbying angle is particularly damaging. That's not just corruption. That touches national security. The FBI will want to move quickly. Elena set her coffee down. "Dominic, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. When have I been anything else? When this started, you told me this was about business. Adrian owed you money and broke a deal, and you wanted to punish him. Was that the whole truth?" Dominic was quiet for a long moment. "No." "Then what was the rest?" "I watched you, Elena, before any of this happened, not because of Adrian, because of you. I watched you at fundraisers and galas and political dinners, always standing 3 steps behind Adrian, always smiling on cue, always playing the role your family assigned you. And I saw something in your eyes that I recognized. The same thing I saw in the mirror when I was 19, and my father told me I would take over the family business whether I wanted to or not. What did you see? A person who was trapped, who knew they were trapped, and who was too smart to stay trapped forever." Elena felt her chest tighten. "So this wasn't just business. It started as business. Adrian's debt was real. His betrayal of our agreement was real. But the proposal, the marriage, the decision to bring you in, rather than handle this alone, that was something else. I don't know what to call it. I don't have the vocabulary for whatever this is. But I know it's not just business. Not anymore." Elena looked at him. This man, this complicated, dangerous, honest, guarded man who had shown her more respect in 3 weeks than Adrian had shown her in 3 years. She didn't love him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she felt something toward him that was deeper and more reliable than anything she had ever felt for Adrian. She felt seen. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me the truth. Always." At midnight, Adrian Cole released a statement through his attorney. He denied all allegations. He called the documents fabricated. He blamed unnamed criminal organizations for a coordinated smear campaign. The statement was 4 paragraphs of carefully worded legal deflection that convinced no one and infuriated everyone. By morning, his campaign headquarters was empty. His staff had abandoned their desks, taking their personal belongings and their futures with them. Peter Langford's phone was disconnected. The donors' representatives issued terse statements expressing concern and a need for transparency, which in political language meant they were running for cover. 3 members of Adrian's own party called for an independent investigation. One senator, a former ally, went on morning television and said the words that every politician dreads hearing from their own side. If these allegations are true, and I have no reason to believe they're fabricated, then Adrian Cole has betrayed the public trust in the most fundamental way possible. He should withdraw from the race immediately and cooperate fully with any investigation. Elena watched that interview from the kitchen table, eating toast that Dominic had made for her. She chewed slowly, watching the senator's face on screen, and felt something she hadn't expected. Emptiness. Not satisfaction, Not triumph, not the rush of victory she had imagined during all those weeks of planning, just a hollow, echoing emptiness, like a room after the furniture has been removed. Adrian was falling. His world was collapsing around him exactly as she had designed, and yet watching it happen didn't feel the way she thought it would. Dominic noticed. He always noticed. "You thought it would feel different," he said. "I thought I would feel something." "You will. Not now. Later. Right now, your body is protecting you from the weight of what you've done. It's the same thing soldiers describe after combat. The fight takes everything. The feeling comes after." "Is that what happened to you?" Dominic poured more coffee. "Every time." Elena pushed her plate aside. "I need to go see Adrian." Dominic looked at her sharply. "Now he's cornered. Cornered men are dangerous. I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to threaten him. I just need to look at him. I need to see what I did. Because if I don't see it with my own eyes, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering whether it was real." Dominic studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and set a car key on the table. "Take Carlo with you. He'll wait outside. If anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. No arguments, no hesitation." Agreed. Elena drove to Adrian's apartment. The same apartment where she had found him with Vanessa. The same doorway where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. Carlo, a massive, silent man who communicated entirely through nods and the occasional grunt, parked across the street and settled in to wait. Elena climbed the stairs. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open. Adrian was sitting on the couch in the same clothes he had worn to his press conference the day before. His tie was loose. His jacket was on the floor. There were newspapers scattered around him, each one carrying the story of his downfall on the front page. He looked up when she walked in, and Elena saw something she had never seen in Adrian Cole's face before. Fear. Not the performative fear he used in speeches, not the calculated vulnerability he deployed to win sympathy. Real fear, the kind that comes from understanding that you are completely, irreversibly finished. "You came," he said. His voice was hoarse. "I came. To see me like this, to watch me fall apart, is that what this is?" Elena sat down across from him. Not close, not far. Just the right distance for two people who used to share a life and now shared nothing but damage. "I came because I needed to understand something," she said. "I needed to understand whether you ever loved me, even once, even for a moment. Because I have spent the last 3 weeks destroying your life, and I need to know whether I destroyed something real or something that was never there to begin with." Adrian stared at her. His eyes were red, his hands were trembling. For the first time since she had known him, every mask was down. Every performance was over. He was just a man sitting in the wreckage of his own choices, facing the woman he had wronged. "I loved you," he said. "In the beginning, I loved you. You were kind and smart, and you laughed at my terrible jokes, and you made me feel like I could be the person I pretended to be. But then your father offered me the deal, the endorsement, the foundation money, the path to office. And I realized that loving you and using you could be the same thing. So I did both. And after a while, I couldn't tell the difference anymore." Elena felt tears burn behind her eyes, not for him, for the version of herself that had believed in him, for the girl who had driven 40 minutes across town with takeout from his favorite restaurant because he texted, "I miss you." That girl deserved to be mourned. "Goodbye, Adrian." She stood and walked to the door. Behind her, she heard him say one last thing, one sentence that she would carry with her for a very long time. "You were always too good for me, Elena. I just didn't want you to know it." She closed the door behind her and walked down the stairs and got into the car where Carlo was waiting. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She sat in the passenger seat and pressed her hand against her chest, feeling her own heartbeat steady and strong, and belonging to no one but herself. Elena drove back to the townhouse in silence. Carlo didn't speak, didn't ask questions, didn't even glance at her in the rearview mirror. He was the kind of man who understood that some moments belonged entirely to the person living through them. Elena appreciated that more than she could have expressed. When she walked through the door, Dominic was waiting in the kitchen, not pacing, not checking his phone, just standing at the counter with his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching the doorway like a man who had been counting the minutes since she left. "How was it?" he asked. "He's finished. He knows it. I know it. There's nothing left." "And how do you feel?" Elena set her keys on the counter. "Like I just performed surgery on myself without anesthesia. It worked. The tumor is out. But I can feel every place where the knife went in." Dominic nodded slowly. "That's honest? You taught me that. Honesty. Or at least you reminded me what it looked like." He almost smiled. That same near smile she had seen at their wedding, the one that appeared and vanished like a flash of light in a dark room. "I didn't teach you anything, Elena. I just stopped being one of the people lying to you." The next 72 hours moved like a wildfire. The U.S. Attorney's Office opened a formal investigation into Adrian Cole's campaign finances. The FBI subpoenaed records from 3 of the shell nonprofits Peter Langford had created. Adrian's attorney released a second statement, this one significantly less defiant than the first, offering to cooperate fully with any legitimate inquiry. In political language, that meant Adrian's own lawyer had read the documents and knew they were indefensible. Grace Holloway called Elena every morning with updates. On the second day, she delivered the news Elena had been waiting for. Adrian's biggest donor just pulled out, the Kramer Group. They were responsible for 40% of his campaign funding. Without them, he can't afford to run a lemonade stand, let alone a political campaign. Has he withdrawn from the race? Not officially. But his party is preparing a statement for later today. They're going to ask him to step down voluntarily. If he refuses, they'll pull their endorsement. Either way, his candidacy is dead. By the end of the third day, Adrian Cole quietly withdrew from the race. No press conference this time. No flags behind him. No applauding reporters. Just a 2-paragraph statement released through his attorney at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, timed to minimize news coverage. The statement expressed deep regret for any appearance of impropriety and announced that Adrian would be focusing on personal matters and cooperating with ongoing inquiries. It was the political equivalent of a white flag wrapped in legal tissue paper. Elena read the statement on her phone and felt that emptiness again. The hollow space where triumph was supposed to live. She had expected fireworks. She had expected a rush of vindication so powerful it would erase every wound Adrian had ever inflicted. Instead, she felt tired. Bone-deep, cellular-level tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes not from physical effort, but from carrying a weight for so long that putting it down feels like losing a limb. "It's over," she said to Dominic that night sitting at the kitchen table. "He's done. The campaign is done. The investigation is just beginning. Adrian is looking at federal charges, Elena. This won't end with a press release." "I know, but my part is finished. I did what I set out to do." Dominic set his coffee down and looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen before. It was careful, measured, the look of a man choosing his next words with the precision of a surgeon. "Elena, there's something I need to tell you." Her stomach dropped. In her experience, no good conversation had ever started with those words. "What is it?" "When I first approached you, I told you that Adrian owed me money and broke a deal. That was true. But there was another reason I chose to involve you specifically, rather than handling Adrian through my own channels." Elena's hands went still on the table. "Tell me." "Your father, Senator Vance. He's been a problem for my organization for years. Not directly. He's never come after us openly. But behind closed doors, he's been funneling information to federal prosecutors about our operations. Small things, supply routes, meeting locations, names of mid-level associates. Nothing that could take us down, but enough to cause damage. Enough to cost me money and men." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "My father has been working against you. For the last 4 years, quietly, carefully, using Adrian's political connections as cover. Your father isn't the innocent bystander. We made him appear in the documents, Elena. He knew about Adrian's corruption because he was part of it, not the money laundering, Something worse. He was using Adrian's illegal contacts as a pipeline to gather intelligence on my organization and feed it to the feds. The room seemed to tilt. Elena gripped the edge of the table. You knew this when you proposed to me. Yes. You married me to get close to my father. Dominic didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He held her gaze with the same unflinching honesty that she had come to depend on, even when that honesty was devastating. I married you for multiple reasons. Your father was one of them. But Elena listened to me carefully. If your father were the only reason, I would have found another way. I didn't need to marry you to deal with Richard Vance. I chose to marry you because in addition to the strategic advantage, I saw something in you that I wanted in my life. Something I had never found anywhere else. What? Courage. Not the reckless kind. The kind that costs everything and knows it and moves forward anyway. That's the rarest thing in the world and you have it. Elena stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. Her chest was heaving. You manipulated me. You let me think I was the one making the choices, but you were steering me the entire time. I gave you the tools and the information. Every decision you made was your own. I never lied to you. Omission is a lie, Dominic. Then I lied by omission, and I'm telling you the truth now because you deserve it, and because if this marriage is going to become something real, it can't be built on half-truths. Elena paced the kitchen. Her mind was racing, pulling apart every conversation, every gesture, every moment of connection she had shared with Dominic, and examining it for manipulation. Had the vulnerability about his nephew been calculated? Had the story about his mother's marinara been a technique? Had every seemingly genuine moment been another chess move in a game she didn't know she was playing? Was any of it real? She asked, her voice cracking for the first time since this whole nightmare began. The conversations, the coffee, the night you told me about your brother. Was any of that real, or was all of it just positioning? Dominic stood up slowly. He crossed the kitchen until he was standing 3 feet from her, close enough to touch. He didn't touch. My brother's name was Antonio. He was killed on a Thursday. I was 23 years old and I held him in my arms while he bled out in a parking lot behind a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore. I have never told anyone that story. Not my associates, not my attorneys, not the 3 women I was involved with before you. I told you because you asked, and because for reasons I don't fully understand, I didn't want to hide from you. That was real. Everything I've told you about myself was real. The manipulation was in what I didn't say, not in what I did. Elena stared at him. Her anger was enormous. It filled the room. It pressed against her ribs like something alive and hungry. But underneath the anger was something else, something that refused to be crushed. Belief. She believed him. Not because she was naive, not because she was desperate, but because she had spent the last month learning to read people with the ruthless clarity of someone whose survival depended on it. And everything in Dominic's face, his posture, his voice, the way he stood still and let her rage without defending himself. Everything said he was telling the truth. "What do you want me to do about my father?" she asked. "Nothing. I'm telling you this so that you're informed, not so that you'll act. Your father's activities against my organization will be handled through my own channels. You are not involved, and you will never be asked to be involved. I'm drawing a line between us and him. What I do about Richard Vance is my business. What you do about being his daughter is yours. And if your business with my father puts him in danger..." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I don't hurt family. That's a rule I've never broken. Your father is your family, which means he's my family now. I won't harm him. I'll neutralize his ability to feed information to the feds, but I'll do it without violence. You have my word." "Your word?" Elena almost laughed. "The word of a man who just admitted he married me partly as a strategic move against my father. The word of a man who could have kept that secret forever and chose to tell you instead. That has to count for something, Elena." It did count. She hated that it counted, but it did. Because Adrian would never have told her the truth voluntarily. Her parents would never have told her the truth voluntarily. Dominic was the only person in her entire life who had looked at her and said, "I did something wrong, and I'm telling you about it because I respect you enough to let you decide what happens next." "I need time," she said. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." Elena spent the next 2 weeks in a state of internal warfare. She continued to live on the 3rd floor of the townhouse. She continued to eat meals that Dominic cooked. She continued to review updates from Grace Holloway about the ongoing investigation into Adrian. But she did all of it with a wall between herself and Dominic that hadn't existed before. She spoke to him when necessary. She was polite, but distant. She needed to figure out whether the foundation of their relationship, such as it was, could survive the crack he had revealed. During those 2 weeks, 2 things happened that changed Elena's perspective. The first was a phone call from her father. Richard Vance called on a Sunday morning, his voice thin and uncertain in a way Elena had never heard. "Elena, I owe you an apology." She almost dropped the phone. In 28 years, her father had never apologized to her for anything. "I failed you," Richard said. "When you came to me about Adrian, I should have listened. I should have protected you. Instead, I protected my investment. I treated you like an asset instead of my daughter, and I'm ashamed of that." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because your mother told me about your marriage to Moretti, and my first reaction was anger, fury. I spent 3 days planning how to undo it, how to extract you, how to fix this problem. And then I stopped and realized that I was doing it again, treating your life as a problem to be managed instead of a choice to be respected." Elena pressed the phone against her ear. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Anything. Were you feeding information about the Moretti organization to federal prosecutors?" The silence was long and thick and suffocating. When Richard spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "How do you know about that? It doesn't matter how. Were you—" "Yes, for 4 years. I used Adrian's connections to identify members of Moretti's network and passed the information to a contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I told myself I was performing a public service, fighting organized crime from the inside. But the truth is, I was building a file, an insurance policy, something I could use to protect myself if my relationship with Adrian ever became a liability." "So you were using Adrian the same way Adrian was using me?" "Yes," his voice broke. "And I'm sorry, Elena, for all of it." Elena hung up and sat with her father's confession for a long time. The symmetry was devastating. Her father had used Adrian. Adrian had used her. She had used Dominic. And Dominic had used her to get closer to her father. It was a perfect circle of manipulation, each person convinced they were the puppet master, while simultaneously being someone else's puppet. The second thing that happened was smaller but more significant. Elena was in the kitchen late one evening when she noticed something on the counter that hadn't been there before. A photograph in a simple wooden frame. It showed a young woman, maybe 30, with dark hair, and Dominic's eyes standing in a kitchen that looked nothing like this one, holding a wooden spoon and laughing at whoever was behind the camera. Elena picked it up. Dominic appeared behind her. "My mother," he said. "I found it in a box last week. I thought you might want to see what she looked like." "Why?" "Because you asked about her once, and I never showed you." Elena looked at the photograph. The woman in it was radiant, happy, alive in a way that seemed to light up the faded image from within. "She looks kind," Elena said. She was. She was also the toughest person I've ever known. She raised 3 children in a world that wanted to swallow them whole, and she did it with a wooden spoon and a temper that could melt steel. Elena set the photograph back on the counter. "Why did you put this here, Dominic? Why now?" "Because you're deciding whether to stay or go. And I wanted you to know that the best part of me, the part that told you the truth when I didn't have to, the part that cooks dinner and worries about my nephew and keeps his promises, that part came from her. Whatever else I am, whatever the world calls me, that part is real. And that's the part I'm offering you." Elena felt something shift inside her. Not the geological crack of betrayal, not the hollow emptiness of revenge fulfilled. Something warmer, something that felt dangerously like the beginning of trust. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said. "I didn't ask you to. But I'm not leaving." Dominic nodded once. "Okay." "And Dominic, if you ever hide something from me again, I won't leave. I'll burn this house down with both of us in it." He looked at her, and this time he actually smiled, a real smile, the first one she had ever seen from him. It transformed his face in a way that startled her, made him look younger, lighter, almost like the boy his mother might have known. "I believe you," he said. Over the following weeks, Elena rebuilt herself. Not the version her parents had constructed, not the version Adrian had exploited. Something new, something forged in fire and honesty, and the hard-won understanding that power is not something given. It is something taken, and it is something that must be used carefully, or it becomes the same weapon that was used against you. She worked with Grace Holloway to establish a legal advocacy fund for women trapped in conservatorship proceedings initiated by abusive partners. She used Dominic's connections to identify other politicians who had been laundering money through charitable foundations, then passed the information to journalists through anonymous channels. She rebuilt her relationship with her father slowly, painfully, one honest conversation at a time, each one stripping away another layer of pretense until they could finally speak to each other as two flawed humans rather than a senator and his obedient daughter. And she built something with Dominic. Not a romance, not a fairy tale, something better. A partnership between two people who had seen each other at their worst and chosen to stay anyway. They argued, they disagreed, they challenged each other constantly, but they never lied. That was the rule, the only rule that mattered, and they kept it. Adrian Cole was indicted on 12 federal charges 6 weeks after withdrawing from the race. Money laundering, wire fraud, campaign finance violations, conspiracy. The foreign lobbying charges alone carried a potential sentence of 15 years. His trial would take months. His lawyers would fight every count. But the outcome was never in doubt. The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were cooperating, and the man who had once stood behind a podium declaring himself a hero was now sitting in a courtroom trying to explain why he had accepted 7 figures from foreign entities in exchange for policy promises. Vanessa testified. She was granted limited immunity in exchange for her cooperation. She told the court everything: the affair, the financial manipulation, the way Adrian had used her access to Elena's family to funnel money through the foundation. When the prosecutor asked her why she had come forward, Vanessa looked directly at Elena, who was sitting in the 3rd row of the gallery, and said, "Because someone gave me the choice that Adrian never did, the choice to tell the truth." Elena didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge the moment publicly, but something settled inside her. Some final piece of a puzzle she had been assembling since the night she stood in Adrian's doorway, holding a bag of takeout and watching her world collapse. On the day Adrian was convicted, Elena stood outside the courthouse with Dominic beside her. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Elena didn't speak to any of them. She didn't need to. The story was already told. In the car driving home, Dominic reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he had initiated physical contact. His hand was warm and rough and steady, and Elena didn't pull away. "What now?" he asked. "Now we build something worth keeping. Together, together." Elena Moretti looked out the window and saw the city passing by. The same city where she had once been a senator's daughter, a politician's fiancé, a decorative piece in someone else's ambition. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, wiser, and unapologetically free. She had walked into the fire as Elena Vance, a woman who was owned by everyone around her. She walked out as Elena Moretti, a woman who owned herself, and that made all the difference.